Sherry, and hello everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. As Sherry said, strategies and tools to help improve reading skills and the new DRA3 experience. I am excited to be here with you today as we look at ways to fill your literacy toolbox, hopefully with fun and practical ideas to promote and get students excited about literacy and support positive literacy outcomes and instruction. And there we go. So for today's agenda, we are going to go ahead and, again, we're going to talk about tips to promote literacy. So we're going to talk about tips to promote literacy in the classroom and at home. We're also going to cover instructional tools and assessments for the classroom. And then we're going to move into the new DRA3. So what is it? How does it work? What are the assessment instructional tools that can provide me in my classroom as well? And then we're going to talk about the new digital platform. That's an exciting new feature that we have within the program. So let's go ahead and get started. And so what a better way to start off our time together today than with a little quote from Dr. Seuss. And so we know how important reading and literacy is as a whole. It opens the doors to limitless possibilities of life. It is the foundation of all of our learning and communication. And it's really critical to our overall success, so not only personally, but in the world in which we live. So this is really why it's crucial that we find ways to create and utilize tools that are going to promote and develop these literacy skills in all of our students and in everyone in general. So I know that when I was a teacher, I was always looking for new ideas and strategies to use with my students, and especially for those students who were struggling and already disenchanted. But I always didn't have assessments and instructional resources to help me to quickly and easily uncover student strengths and needs, so that I could better be more effective as a teacher, so that I could better differentiate my instruction and really facilitate more positive literacy outcomes. So that's why I think it's really important that we have, various tools in our toolboxes to help us uncover these strengths, uncover the needs, and help guide our instruction, as well as, tools to help us promote literacy and get students and families excited about literacy and learning. So question for you, what do you have in your toolbox? Is it overflowing, or like my toolbox, are you struggling to keep it filled with new and fresh ideas? So either way, we're going to take a look at how to fill, or more importantly, maybe how to overflow those toolboxes with resources. So really, when the possibilities and ideas are really endless of what we have to kind of put in there. It's just finding ways of accessing them or getting those ideas. So what I'm about to share with you today are just some of the ideas that you can implement in your classroom. Now, some of these ideas are ideas that I used when I was in this classroom. Some were strategies that my son's teacher did with him as he struggled with literacy. And some just came from some online research that I did on the topic. Some I know are going to be old news to you, and you probably already used them, or maybe you know about them but you forgot about using, or haven't used them in a while. But what I'm hoping is that there are going to be a couple of new and interesting ones that you're going to be able to, that you're going to like and that you're going to want to try into your classroom. So there are a lot. I have 3 screens full of different resources. I'm going to try to get through as many as I can. But I might skip over some of them. And if I skip over one of them and you don't really understand or want a little bit more information on it, put it in the chat, and as Sherry said, later on after the webinar, I'll go ahead and get back to you and give you some more information on that. So we know the importance of reading aloud to our students, but do we know, sometimes I think we think as the students get older, that's not a strategy or a tip or a tool that we don't, that we shouldn't use anymore. But really, no matter how old our students are, even us adults, we love to be read to. And so it's a really great way to be able to model reading and expression and get students really excited about books. So reading aloud is always tried and true and something that we should always kind of incorporate. What I always like to do, this was in the classroom and at home, is read books that have accompanying movie. So this can be that read aloud book that you're reading out to students. But after you're done reading the book, show them the movie as a culminating activity. And then after the movie, discuss which ones they like best. Compare, you can compare and contrast the book with the movie, find similarities and differences. The thing that always just warms my heart is when I do this with my nephew, I did this with my son, I did this with my students in the classroom, is when they tell me how the book was just so much better than the movie, because it goes into richer detail. They're making that movie in their mind. So really a great way to get students interested in reading and literacy. Another thing you can do, and you probably already do, is create a reading wall as well as student book review wall. So really this is to help create excitement around books. I know that when I choose a book to read, I will ask a friend, what they have read recently, what they recommend, or I read reviews on the books before I go ahead and purchase or check them out. And so this will give you the opportunity for students to share what they thought about a book and for other students to read and decide whether they want to read that book too. So great little idea there. InfoShare. So this is a neat little concept here. So with InfoShare, as we are talking about literacy being all-encompassing, this really encompasses everything. It includes communication and developing those communication skills. So with this concept and idea, it's to spark information, to spark this InfoShare with your students, maybe come to school with an interesting little tidbit or something that you either read or you saw or you heard on the radio, some kind of fun fact. Make it a habit. Encourage students to do the same. So what happens is then over time, students are going to increase their knowledge on these different little topics and tidbits that are being shared. They're going to develop, if they start to share too, they're going to develop their communication skills, getting in front of students in class and sharing their, when they share their tidbit with everybody. It's also going to inspire them to start going to look for sources to discover new information. So what you're really doing too is you're sparking that interest in them to try to seek out different fun facts or different pieces of information to share with the group. One of the things I like to do in my classroom is the group read aloud, and I also taught a structured English immersion class, and this was really beneficial for them as well. But basically with the group read aloud, we would pick a passage or a short article, story, something, and we would creatively interact with it as a class, so the whole class together. So we would read it together. We would do different voices. We would do sing-song, we'd do it in a song way, sing-song way. We would do it in various accents. We might act it out or do some role play. It took off pressure of students having to read aloud by themselves or students that were struggling with reading. It gave them kind of a way to follow along with everybody and read what they could read without having any kind of pressure on them. It helped with fluency too with my English learners and stuff. So it's a great fun activity to get your students excited in there. Word hunt. So this, could be used after after a phonics or a spelling pattern has been taught or learned by your students. Have them search for those patterns of those words in a familiar book that they know, so that you're emphasizing what was learned. And so we're connecting, we're doing things to connect with the instruction, to excite students here. But here, they can work individually, in pairs, and groups. They can write the words on a wall or put them on a wall. Maybe they put it in a journal or a book. So something to always, always to have around into the classroom. We also have that teacher share, and so school quick tips. And so maybe that's something where as a school, you go ahead and develop, a tip of the week, or where everybody kind of shares something so that the school is doing some kind of tip of the week as well. Continuing on here, we have some more tips continuing. We'll go a little bit quicker through these, or maybe skip around a little bit more on these. But one of the things I think is really important is to encourage a variety of reading materials. So in your classroom library, or if not, in your school library or something, is to really have a variety of reading materials, because we know students have different abilities, different levels of ability. They have different interests. We need to really find out what encourages our students to read. I know for my son, who I said was a struggling reader, that graphic novels really allowed him to read on grade level material without that typical struggle that he had with chapter books. He also hugely benefited from books on tape. Again, when he was in middle school, he had to, they had to complete, they had 45 pages of required reading that they had to do per night. And so that, for a struggling reader, that was, it was just not going to happen for him. And so, but he had wonderful teachers that really helped him choose books of interest, choose books that were on tape. And the only requirement is that he had to read along with the book as the tape, as the book was being read out loud. And what he found was that by, towards the end of the year, he did not need to have the book on tape anymore. He was able to complete that reading on his own. So it gave him a great sense of accomplishment, a great sense of pride. It increased his fluency and his reading strengthened. And so I can't say enough, but their comic books, all different kinds of reading materials are beneficial for our students. And so we want to make sure that we incorporate those all into our classroom libraries there. Another thing is kind of like a little twist on daily journaling. So daily journaling fun. So in this instance here, it's important that we set aside time for journaling. So, but maybe give it a little twist. So maybe give a prompt with the journal, with like the journaling time. So have students maybe write about what they learned in one of the lessons, or maybe something that they experienced on the playground or at home the night before. It's really important and good idea for teachers to also journal at the same time with the students. And then even, maybe the teacher starting to share their journal, what they wrote about for modeling, and then encouraging students to maybe share what they wrote as well. Again, bringing in all of the comprehensiveness of literacy as a whole here. Another fun idea, and again, now as we go into some of these latter activities, not only we're talking about literacy, but we're also kind of bridging it with instruction, or with our instruction, what our students have learned here. So exit slips. So whether you are you have students that transition from one class to the next in your school, or whether you're maybe transitioning from one subject area to the next in your classroom, exit slips is a great idea. This helps with writing. It also helps with checking. It also checks for understanding. So in this concept here, a teacher would provide a question or a prompt, and then students would express themselves through written communication. So examples of some questions here might be, what is the most important thing you learned in class today? Or how would you explain this concept to a friend? Did you understand today's lesson? Why or why not? What questions do you have in today's lesson? So again, you're getting them to kind of recap what was learned. So you're kind of building that comprehension of, what was taught. You're having them practice their writing skills, and you can get great information on seeing how they're communicating through writing so that you can inform your instruction in writing. But then you're also seeing how did they grasp what I taught, and do I need to do any reteaching? So really kind of full, well-rounded tool there to put in your box there. We also have answer explanations, and so that is where students are going to actually write the process of how they determined an answer to a question, or how they solved the problem. So that's a really great tool for any subject area, and it really helps students, create a more complete response. And then the other thing I like to do, and again, this kind of brings everything together, so it's not only encouraging literacy, but also kind of connecting what they're learning in the classroom and, kind of checking for understanding and kind of deepening their knowledge, is to write a review quiz. And so here, students are going to write, maybe have them write a 5-question quiz over a certain material, maybe something that's coming up that you're going to quiz them on. And then what they can do is they write the quiz, then they exchange it, then they take another student's quiz, and then they're going to grade the quizzes that they wrote, and then they'll discuss the correct answers with the one who took the quiz. And so again, deepening, but providing that communication skills, their written skills, and such. Oh, so I need to take a breath on that. So a lot of fun tools there, and those are, tips for in the classroom. But now we're going to move really quickly to tips that promote literacy at home. And really, literacy begins in the home and should always be a part of the home. So wanted to also provide a few tips of how we can help promote literacy in the home. Again, we all know the importance of nightly reading with our students. or with our children, if you have children. So really promoting that with parents to read with their children, reading to, reading with, also sharing what they've read with their children. And maybe what, you know, would be a fun thing as a family activity, a nightly activity to do is create a reading zone. So this would be where you create a specific time and space in the house where everyone, you know, reads for 30 minutes. And, you know, and children seeing their parents read really encourages them to read too. It's also important for parents to kind of talk about books that they've read, talk about their day, talk about their child's day. So really, and also like including really how literacy impacts their daily life. So the more that they hear the importance of, you know, how literacy is, and, you know, how I have to use my writing and my reading and my speaking skills in my job and everything like that, the more importance that they put, the more the student realize how important that is and take kind of vested more interest in it. Always a fun thing to do as a family and for family, you know, togetherness is play word games, you know, something like Scrabble that helps spelling and vocabulary, that, you know, kind of family fun there. They can be inventive and creative, and what's nice about that is that it's not the smartest person who's going to win all the time. I mean, when I was, you know, younger, I thoroughly enjoyed annoying my aunt and my cousin for winning with 3-letter words. I mean, that's possible. You just got to, you know, be fun and inventive and stuff like that. Encouraging them to make frequent trips to the library and participate in those activities that are provided by the library. Again, as we talked about, like the book and movie reviews in the classroom, this is also another great thing for parents to do at home when they're reading maybe to their child, or the child reading to them. You know, there's great, you know, there's many books. You know, there's Holes, and there's Hunger Games, and there's Harry Potter series, and all of those that have the movies with the books there. So. And then lastly, what I'm just going to kind of talk about or just kind of mention is pen pals, and that's a great way for if they have maybe a grandmother or a cousin or something like that that lives in a different state or whatever, maybe just, you know, might be fun. I mean, who doesn't love getting mail, a letter in the mail, something that's other than a bill from someone that you haven't heard from in a while or that you look forward to that communication. So again, that's going to just promote that literacy skills. So okay, there we go. So those are just, you know, those are just some of the fun ideas you can do in your classroom to promote literacy skills. Also, and you know, for check for understanding as well as ideas that you can share with parents that they can continue that at home. So I really hope in that little overview there that you know, found a couple new ideas, you know, something that's going to, you know, fill up that toolbox for you. So that you can incorporate into your classroom. And what's really nice about many of those ideas is that those are something that you can just start implementing today. You know, they're not going to take, you know, extra time and resources to create or anything like that. So I hope you found that beneficial and like some of those ideas. So now that we have some of those activities to help promote and encourage and get students excited about literacy, what do you have that's going to help really uncover the student's reading level, their strengths, their struggles, that's going to help provide you with guidance on what to instruct and how, so that you can really help close whatever, you know, possible gaps there might be in your students', you know, literacy skills, or, you know, provide maybe further enrichment for, you know, for students' learning. So in the next section that we're going to cover now as we're going through our agenda is I'm going to briefly talk about and highlight some of the tools that we have within the developmental reading assessment, so the DRA3. And so so we're just going to talk about some of the tools that are going to help in these areas, and then we're going to move on to then more of the background of what the program is and kind of the structure of the program to put everything together. But I first wanted to just kind of, since we're on the topic of tools, talk about some of the tools that we have in there that's going to be helpful as you're going through that process and identifying with students. So the first thing I wanted to do is just wanted to pinpoint out that there are various assessments within the DRA3 program. So I'm going to go, like I said, I'm going to go over exactly what these assessments are more in depth in a minute. but wanted to highlight that within the program, we have the benchmarking, we have progress monitoring, we have word analysis, and then to bring it all together, we have a continuum of descriptors that allows you to identify those strengths and needs and then move it into the focus for instruction so that you can see specifically what skills and areas that should be instructed upon next. Because we know that really in order to get the most out of any assessment, there really needs to be that connection with instruction. And so it's not just good enough to have a score. We need to be able to analyze and be able to have tools to help us answer, well, now what do I do? Because that's really, you know, when we're doing these types of assessments, that's really what we want to know. We want to know where they're at, but we want to know how to guide their instruction. What are we going to teach them next so that we can close that gap or enrich them and move them further along. And so that's where we take the assessments and then we have the culminating continuums and the focus for instruction on there to move them along. So continuing with that focus on connecting instruction and adding the tools to your toolbox, in the word analysis component of the DRA, it contains mini lessons or learning activities. And so we're going to go over these a little bit, but they're going to give you the opportunities to know kind of what to teach or what to reteach. And so it's going to provide you with a lot of nice information. So, but we're going to, again, make that connection from assessment to instruction. We also have, when you're using the progress monitoring, we have, and you're using the assessment results, we're going to help you identify the interventions for each skill that you've assessed in that progress monitoring. So we have, for example, we have if-then statements, and so with each one of the passages that we'll talk about in a second with the progress monitoring, we provide recommendations for instructional activities. We also have instructional routine cards, and this is going to give some more explicit instruction on strategies and lessons that you can give. So again, making those connections, providing you with tools so that we can bridge that gap from instruction from assessment to instruction. Now, moving along into a different type of tool that we have within the program. So when we're looking at assessing our students and doing a benchmark and kind of trying to understand where to really start, we have a new component within the program. It's called the Level Estimator. And this is just going to easily help you quickly identify where to start the assessment, benchmark assessment with your students. And so just another great little tool that, you know, to put into your box there with them. And then one of the most exciting features that we have in our new DRA3 is our digital platform. And so basically what this is going to do is this is going to be a tool to help you save time in assessing your students and scoring and getting that information of your students. Basically so everything is going to be online. My plan is to, at the end of one of the last things to do is take you on a live tour and just show you some of the components within here. But basically, teachers don't need to, they can still administer paper and pencil and hand score everything, but we have the digital platform here now too, so that all the teacher resources are contained within here. You don't need to print out anything for the teacher anymore. You can orally record, and and all your reporting and information is in there. So it's really excited to share more information about that with you as we go on. So, okay, so that was really a quick highlight of just some of the tools within the DRA3. So tools are going to help you, again, uncover students' reading level, their strengths, their struggles, tools that are going to help you make that transition into instruction. But I'm kind of suspecting that what you might be asking right now, especially if you don't have any prior experience to DRA3, is what really exactly is the DRA3? What does it look like? How does it work? You know, how does all of this kind of fit together? So what we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and we're going to dive into an overview of the DRA3 so that can help answer some of those questions. And so again, so there is a lot of information. There's a lot of components within the DRA3. So this is going to be kind of a higher level overview of the program. Some areas I might get into a little bit more deeper conversation, but This is just to kind of give you a basic understanding and overview of the program here. So when we're looking at what is the DRA3? So it is the DRA3, it stands for the Developmental Reading Assessment. It's the 3rd edition. It's a formative reading assessment. And so this is where teachers are going to systematically observe, record, and evaluate student changes, or evaluate changes in students' reading performance. It's a proven diagnostic assessment. It provides teachers with recommendations for scaffold to support and increases student reading proficiency, to help increase student reading proficiency. It's been around for a little over 3 decades, and it's supported by sound validity and reliability analysis, and so which it combines, that over 3 decades of teacher expertise within the program. So basically, when we look at the main purposes of the DRA3, it's really to identify a student's independent or instructional reading level and inform instructional needs by providing that clear focus of where to begin with each student. It also helps to promote good reading behaviors. And so we're going to go ahead and now just take a little bit look here. Okay. So in reading behaviors, and we do this through, those various assessments that I talked about, so the benchmark, the progress monitoring, the word analysis. And so a little bit more detail on the benchmark assessment. So this is, again, going to measure each student's reading proficiency through that systematic observation, the recording and evaluation of performance. And so with this, teachers are going to administer the benchmark assessment to all their students 2 to 3 times a year. And you're going to use fiction and nonfiction text and to help identify that instructional plan. So that will, it's going to meet the needs of each one of the students. So that's really the purpose of that benchmark assessment. Now, we also have that progress monitoring. And so the progress monitoring assessment includes brief passages of from DRA levels 4 through 60. And this is really so that teachers can regularly observe and record reading behaviors of students in between the benchmark assessments. And then the word analysis is going to be a more in-depth tool. This is something that's going to be used to observe how struggling and emerging readers are attending to and working with various components of spoken and written words. And so here, this is something, and this is a tool that can be used also to intervene with students that are falling below the grade level benchmarks. And again, as I said before, throughout the assessments, teachers are going to be completing that continuum. As I said, so this is a set of descriptors that are going to describe the student's level of performance in various areas. So like reading engagement, oral reading fluency, comprehension, allowing you to pinpoint the areas to help focus the instruction. And then after you complete that continuum, it's going to really transition seamlessly into that focus for instruction. So that focus for instruction is going to be used to determine, what the student needs to learn next. It's going to provide a checklist of activities and learning experiences based on how they were scored on within that continuum. So before we go any further into into the program and everything like that, I really think it's important to kind of talk a little bit about where the program came from, how it was developed, and why it was developed. And so I want to spend just a couple minutes here talking about introducing the authors of the program. So the authors of the program are Joetta Beaver and Mark Carter. And so together in the late 1980s, they really identified, that there was a need for an assessment to especially help at-risk students with reading. And so this is where they started to develop the DRA with, the goal of helping teachers. They really wanted teachers to become connoisseurs of reading, while also encouraging students to be involved in their reading learning process. So this part's really important too. They really wanted, an assessment to reflect a more realistic process of reading. So they wanted students to be able to go through that process of choosing a book, reading that book, and then being able to talk about and understand what was read. So a more realistic process to reading there. And so over the past 3 decades, The DRA has really provided teachers with that important reading skill information to really impact the students' reading progress. Now, one of the, get that to switch over there. So when developing the program, DRA was based on what educators and excellent research literature identified as being key characteristics and behaviors of good readers. And so what I wanted to do on this slide here was highlight some of the key characteristics and behaviors that have been identified of good readers, because it's really important to recognize those characteristics and behaviors to help us be able to scaffold the process of learning to read and foster that in all of our students. And so having a little background on some of the key characteristics, I'm just going to go over some of the key characteristics and behavior. It's also going to help us better understand the design and the purpose of the developmental reading assessment, the DRA. So really quickly, you can see there are three categories or areas here of good readers: reading engagement, oral reading fluency, and comprehension. And when we look at reading engagement, we're really looking, the students that enjoy reading. They read often, they read a wide variety of genres to meet multiple purposes. They know how to selectively select a text so that it will match their reading level as well as their interests and their purposes. They're also confident about their ability to read. They are aware of the strengths that they have as readers. So that's just a little bit for reading engagement. Now for oral reading fluency, when we look at what good, some characteristics and behaviors of good readers there, these are students that read appropriately level text with a high level of accuracy. During the read, they're monitoring their meaning. They're using fix-up strategies to help them quickly self-correct any miscues, especially those that interfere with meaning. They're reading quickly and smoothly, as well as they're reading in longer, more meaningful phrases with that effective expression. And then finally, when we look at comprehension for what good readers do, they're reviewing text, they're making predictions about what is likely to happen. They're identifying topics or information that might be included later on. They're asking themselves questions, prior to and during the reading of the book or the text. They're using the text features and the graphic organizers. They're able to really comprehend what they read and able to put that into their own language, using key vocabulary from the text so that they're identifying and organizing important information into, they're able to organize and put important information into a written summary. So that's another important component there. Also with students, they interpret what they're reading, they make inferences, they're making connections, they can support their responses with information from the text. So really, and then they're really aware of strategies that they use to construct and monitor meaning while they're reading. So, again, just wanted to identify some of those key characteristics and behaviors of good readers. Because again, it's important for us to be aware of those in our teaching and helping our students in developing those skills, but it's also important as we go through and talk about the DRA because the program is really you'll see how it's kind of built around this information and how we've incorporated it into the program. So we're going to go ahead now and take a look at how it's incorporated into the program and a little bit more on the process of the program. So really looking at how does the DRA work. So when we're going to start with, you start with the benchmark assessment, and we're going to spend the most time on this information on this assessment. Again, I'm not going to be going through everything within this, but I am going to probably spend a little bit more time on this because this is really the main part of it, part of the program. You have to start with the benchmark assessment. So with the benchmark assessment, again, just to kind of reiterate, it's going to measure the student's reading proficiency. And again, teachers are going through that systematic observation, recording, and evaluation of performance. When teachers administer this, really they're administering it to identify an instructional plan that's going to help meet the needs of each one of the students. So with the DRA, though, it's really going to guide you through the steps of the program. So it's not like it's going to be very concise. Everything's going to be contained in certain areas for you. So you're not have to like pulling parts in different pieces and kind of trying to figure out what to do. It's going to really walk you through the plan and the steps here that Instructional says, so that you're able to pinpoint those student strengths and abilities and needs. And so the first step that you're going to do is you're going to select the student's level, the level for assessment. And so you're going to identify a level to benchmark each one of your students are. You're going to provide them with book choices to read. And we're going to go through each one of these steps too. The second step, which is now optional in DRA3, but I still think it's very, very important, is the reading engagement, because it provides you with such valuable information. So being optional, it doesn't have to be in step 2. It can be at any time. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But basically, this is what's going to help provide important, you're going to be able to observe your students' reading habits, their preferences, and their goals. Next, we have the next step is the oral reading. So this is the oral reading fluency or the oral reading conference, and this is where teachers are going to analyze and record oral reading, the oral reading of their students. We're going to follow it up with the comprehension, so the printed language concepts and the comprehension section there. This is where you'll evaluate how well students understood the information that they read. And then again, we're going to culminate that with the teacher analysis. So we're going to use those assessment results so that we can really personalize the instruction to meet the needs of each one of our learners. Okay. So now let's go through really quickly and look at step 1. So step 1 is selecting the student's level for assessment. So with this, so before you meet with your students, before you start the assessment, you're going to need to choose a set of DRA3 set of benchmark texts for that you're going to think is most appropriate for your students' reading level. And so then once you decide the level, then you can take the books in that level and, pick a few for maybe that your students can choose between, like read. Because we know that it's important for students to feel like they're invested in the assessment and, reading something that maybe has some interest to them. So that's why we provide a choice of books for the students and giving students some control in the assessment there. Just a little quick background on these books. They are developmentally appropriate benchmark assessment books. They're original text. We have them in fiction and nonfiction, from emergent levels to early transitional, expanding intermediate and middle school levels. The books are going to be, they're engaging. They have multicultural topics. So we really want to make sure that we're keeping those students engaged, especially as the difficulty of the level of book increases and those topics are changing to reflect those growing interests. With each one of these books, each one has their own teacher observation guide. That includes all the directions and the questions and the prompts and everything that you need, as well as space for recording the observations and the behaviors and the students' responses. So it'll have everything that you need there. And again, so they're carefully developed, they're grade appropriate, and made to appeal to, to a vast variety of your students. Now, for those students that you might not have any kind of assessment data or records, or maybe you have a new student that's come into the school or your class, this is where that new tool that I told you about in the toolbox comes in handy, the level estimator. So this is, it's something that's very quick to administer. It's a word list screener. And so it's a perfect first step so that you can help identify an appropriate level to start the assessment with a particular student. So for those new students, you would go ahead and do the level estimator first, or students that you don't have any idea on. Level estimator first, it's going to give you an idea of where to start that benchmark assessment. Then you can go ahead and pull your books out. And, most levels have 4 books, 2 nonfiction and 2 fiction at each one of those levels. And so maybe you want to pick a fiction and a nonfiction to give to them so that, ones that you think that they might enjoy, and then go from the assessment from there. Okay, so once we have picked the book, this is where you can do the reading engagement. And again, this is optional, but I really strongly recommend that this be done. Because this is really where you learn how your students view themselves as readers. So they're going to answer questions. They'll either answer them orally or through a written survey. That just depends on the level that they're at. But what the survey was really going to do, it's going to reveal students' reading preferences. And this also might help to identify students who are passive about reading, have limited literacy experiences, maybe have little to no reading support at home. So it really, gives you the ability to kind of understand your students a little bit more as you're preparing for the assessment and you're preparing for instruction there. And that's just a little example of the reading survey. That's actually a one for example of the reading survey there. Okay. So moving on to the next step, so step 3, which is the reading conference oral reading fluency. So this here is really, we're going to help identify a student's reading fluency. So this is a one-on-one teacher-to-student conference. This is really at the heart of the DRA. This conference allows teachers to really observe and interact with their students. Teachers you'll be able to hear the students, how they apply strategies for sounding out difficult words, their phrasing and expression in reading are also heard directly by the teacher. This gives teachers invaluable information about their reading skills and abilities that you wouldn't necessarily find from a typical assessment. So really an important piece of the program here. So this is just an example. So of the oral record form here. So during the conference, like I said, everything is laid out for you. You're going to have bolded print instructions to read from. That's going to direct you in how to use the observation guide, how to go through the assessment here. Then once you read the bolded instruction, the students are going to then begin reading aloud. In your observation guide, it's going to tell you exactly what to say, so that there's not only that there's no confusion for you on what you can prompt for information, but it helps to make the test more consistent as well. So that when you can then more confidently compare results from classroom to classroom or school to school, depending on your level, if you're a teacher or administrator or whatever. So here, as the student reads, the teacher is going to note the miscues on the student's record to determine the accuracy rate there. You're going to document the oral reading fluency. Again, that's going to include that expression, phrasing, rate as well. So you're going to be able to determine if that text is an appropriate level that's to be read independently by that student there. So, and depending on the level of the student, it will go ahead and determine if it's read completely in front of the teacher, or if only a certain section is read with the teacher and the rest is read on their own. As you get into upper grades, you're just doing the oral reading conference to a certain stopping point, and then the students are going to read the rest of it on their own. And then, student finishes it, and then you're going to be able to record the minutes and the seconds and their time. It also gives you discontinue rules if a student doesn't meet specific requirements in their accuracy and rate there. And moving on into the comprehension portion of the assessment, this is the phase that you evaluate the assessment, evaluate how students, do their abilities to read independently, their abilities to demonstrate their understanding of the text. And they'll either do this through oral retelling or in written form. And that'll depend on the level of the student. So students they're gonna construct meaning before, during, and after reading of text. we know that that is critical to reading comprehension. They're going to demonstrate how well they understand the text by providing, again, either oral or written responses to comprehension questions. And so this is just, so the students, they'll be able to do some prediction. Teachers are going to make some notation. The students are going to predict, teachers make notation on what the students are predicting and how that student, constructs meaning before they read. And then before they read the rest. So students are going to be able to read a little bit to the teacher. They're going to do some prediction, and then they'll read the rest of it, and we'll, kind of go and see whether, go and evaluate how their predictions panned out there. Moving on, so in the here then you're going to ask students when we move into, after the reading, we're going to move into tell me what happened in the story. We're really going to assess the students' higher level comprehension skills and strategies through this. So again, in some of the younger grades, once you get to like level 28, it moves into more of where, or I think level 28, but they'll start to write some of their information. So depending on the level of the level of the student, they'll either read the entire book to the teacher and answer those comprehension questions in an oral retelling. They may read part of the story on their own. They may make predictions and then read more on their own, and then they may write some of their answers. So it all depends on the level, but basically what we have is that there's reading to the teacher with oral retelling. As the students move up in grades, they'll read part of it to the teacher, and they'll read part on their own, and then also answer some of those questions on their own. And in fact, I believe I have an example of some of the older materials here. So in the upper grades here, they will complete some of these sections with the teacher, and then so they'll do the oral reading conference with the teacher. They'll do some before reading section with the teacher, and then they'll go and do read the remainder of the benchmark assessment book, and respond to those questions and prompts in the student booklet independently. So they're only spending a short amount of time with the teacher there, and then the teacher will evaluate their information there. But students will compose a summary of the most important events, characteristics, characters, and or facts and ideas. So, so you can see all of the different areas in which it assesses there as well. And then we get into the teacher analysis. And so with the teacher analysis, once they've completed all the steps and they've analyzed the students' responses and the notes that they've made, then we have various assessment forms. And so this is where they move into the continuum and the focus for instruction. And so really quickly to just kind of go over just kind of what those forms look like here. So on the left-hand side there, you have the continuum. That's where teachers are going to circle the statements that best describe the students' reading behaviors in each one of those categories. And then based on those selective statements of the student performance, that's what's going to determine if the student is emerging intervention, developing instructional, or independent or advanced reader. And then that is going to be the perfect guide to determine what skills need to be assessed or taught for immediate intervention or ongoing practice or enrichment. And so then the final step is completing that focus for instruction. So whatever circle descriptors that are in that instructional or below category, that's going to transfer over to the focus for instruction and become the instructional needs for the students. And one of the things I want to show you is that I haven't gone into the reports and documentation, but there are different reports and different ways to track performance and growth for the students, and all of that, again, is provided. So that was really quickly just an overview of the benchmark assessment. Looking at time, I'm going to kind of go a little bit faster here. Just to get through the word analysis and the progress monitoring and some of the different tools and show you that online digital platform there. So again, word analysis, individual diagnostic assessment, it's going to give you the systematic means to observe how emerging and struggling readers attend to and work with various components of spoken and written words. And so what you're going to do is this information here is going to enable you to more effectively make teaching decisions to help those emerging and struggling readers gain the word analysis skills and strategies that they need to be able to comprehend more challenging words. And so basically a quick look at what is included in this word analysis. What you can see is it has 40 tasks within 5 strands. You can see that those strands listed on the screen there. You're observing and assessing foundational skills. And so these tasks reflect what developing readers need to know and what they need to do successfully in problem solving. And especially as they're going to start reading more challenging and meaningful text. So you determine their level of control with various tasks and their progress over time there. All right, so let's see. Oops. And so this is just a little example of, remember we talked about the tools that we have. Once you've assessed with the students and you find where their instructional needs are, we also have those mini lessons or learning activities that will help guide and address each one of those tasks. And so this gives you really those opportunities to teach, reteach, review, and reassess those concepts, those strategies or skills for those students there. So that's just a little brief overview of the word analysis. Now we have the progress monitoring. And so here, again, that's that quick and simple means to, really measure the reading growth in between the benchmark period. So this is really perfect for, to use with RTI to really determine the effectiveness of instruction and intervention. And so teachers are going to, again, you'll get that focus for continued classroom instruction and stuff. So really, here's the steps of the progress monitoring, the steps that you're going to go through. So it's going to, it's going to be that standardized procedure for teachers to monitor that progress of struggling readers. So it's really for those struggling readers, to inform that instruction. So this is, again, in a one-on-one conference, and you'll go through the oral reading fluency, the comprehension, the vocabulary, word reading skills, and really be able to provide, go through analysis of those reading behaviors and responses. And just to kind of, reemphasize what tools, when we talked about the tools in the toolbox, we have those if-then strategies here. So that's going to give, recommendations for instructional activities, as well as then we have those routine cards. And again, these, these are explicit instructional strategies for teaching and practicing fluency, retelling, summarizing, and vocabulary, as well as word reading. And so this will help guide your instruction in a particular area. This does not need to be fully used within, the progress monitoring either. This is something that you can use in any of your instruction. You can just go ahead and read those and see where it fits into your classroom there. So now what I wanted to kind of do is, we're talking about the DRA. I talked about how it's been around for a while. And we're talking about the new DRA3 today and some of the new components within that. And so if, for those of you who are familiar with the original DRA or the DRA2, hopefully you've noticed through the conversation some of the enhancements that we've made in those latest versions. But at this time, what I'd like to do is just kind of highlight just some of those components there. And before we do that, I wanted to kind of, one of the things that we didn't talk about was, I talked about all these components, but what do you get? And so everything that I've showed you, everything that I've talked about, all is included in the kit, whether it's a K-3 kit or a 4-8 kit. So your progress monitoring, your awareness, all the assessments, all those tools that I've shared with you, all the materials, everything that you get is all included in there. And so, so you don't have to worry about, what do I need to buy or purchase, or everything is included for you so that you can do the complete and comprehensive assessment and continue monitoring of your students. just a couple things I want to highlight with new. We talked about things. We look here. We have the new digital platform solution, and I'm hoping that it might go a few minutes over if you have a few extra seconds, just a couple minutes, but I'm going to go into that. But that's going to allow you to assess, score, assess reports, and maintain student records all in an online place. And so what's exciting about this too is since we just launched the new DRA3 in the platform, for the 1920 school year, for each kit that you purchase, you will receive 30 digital student licenses complimentary. And then after the 1920 school year, it'll be a small fee for the per student for the licenses. But this, again, is going to allow you to do everything online. It'll record your students. It'll go ahead and help you score it. It'll provide your reports there. Everything is on there, so really saves you time. The only thing you'll need to do is print out the materials for the student portion, but that's even in the digital platform for you. We also, again, I just talked about how everything is all included in one kit. So no matter what you need, it's all in there. We've expanded the book options, and this is really exciting and important. And so because we heard a lot of this, we wanted more book choices. And so we have nonfiction and fiction text across each of the reading levels. And so there are over 100 benchmark assessment books throughout the K-8 kits. So giving teachers and students more reading options to choose from. We talked about the level estimator. Don't forget about that. That's going to take the guesswork out of what level to start assessing your students on. And then included in each of the kits purchase is access to a suite of online professional resources. And so this is really exciting because now you have online resources that include the technical manuals, digital versions of the Blackline Masters, and as well as several on-demand getting started training modules. So we're trying to make everything more streamlined and consistent and everything easily into one, in one place for you. At this time, what I'd like to do is I'm going to take a really quick look into, I'm going to share my desktop. Hopefully this works. Sherry, I'm going to ask you to make sure that we can see. So I'm just going to spend just the next minute or so just kind of showing you what that digital platform looks like. So Sherry, can you see my screen with the DRA3 and the login? I'm going to go ahead and log in. Hopefully you're seeing this. So basically I logged in. I'm going to select my class. And when I select my class, this is my teacher home screen. So basically what I can see here is all my students on the screen. From this screen, I can launch any of the assessments. So I can see here some of the students that I've already assessed. It'll give me color coding of whether they are independent level or instructional level so that I can see right away. I have exclamation points of students that I need to still assess. I can see that this student here with the instructional, the word analysis is available for them, but what's recommended is progress monitoring. Again, I can launch any of these assessments from within the platform here. So I'm going to go ahead and just pick a student. As I pick a student, it's going to take me to the recommended, based on the grade level that was put in there, recommended set of books. And so I can see what books I can go ahead and pick and choose for the student for them to choose from. But I'm going to go back to the top here because I want to show you the tab. So here, if I don't know my students, this is where I'm going to access my level estimator. I go in really quickly here. It's going to give me all of the instructions and what to do. And basically with this, it's just a word list. The students are reading the words. I'm going to go ahead and words that students get wrong, I'm going to mark. Once they do that, it lets you know that it stops after 6 consecutive words. It tells me what book level then is recommended for that student. So then I can go ahead and save that, submit that, and then move on. So I'm going to go, after the level estimator, I can go back, and now I can go back into the benchmark. And so I can just want to show you, you can pick the levels here. It told me A through 3, so that's bringing me there. I'm going to go into a little bit, we'll go back into that recommended there, and we'll go into we'll just click on any of these books here. So actually what I should have showed you, let me go back really quickly, is that you have your Blackline Masters. You have all of that within your kit. But if you want to print from your computer, you can do that as well. So you can use the Blackline Masters, or you can go into this additional materials and print right from there. So go into Missing Sneakers here. The tabs across the top are going to guide you through each one of the sections of what you need to do. The first one is going to be the oral reading fluency. So the oral conference, again, it's going to bold words that you need to say and what to do. On the side here, you can see the different miscues. You start assessment, student starts reading. It's recording the students for you, so you can always play back what they're saying. If the student gets a word wrong, maybe they omitted this word. So I press omit. If I keep going on, maybe they made a substitution for this word. So basically, you're just going to listen to the students read. This is going to scroll until they're stop. You're going to tell them where they need to stop. Once they stop, you press the stop button. It's going to automatically calculate the miscues as well as their words per minute and give you that fluency rate. So if I continue the next section, it's going to pull up the continuum automatically for me. It's going to go ahead and give me the descriptors filled out for that was self-scored by the program. And then here I can go ahead and click on the rest of the continuum and the descriptors there. I have more information here that I can also add. I can also add what the specific substitutions were in that. But basically save and continue, and it's going to move me on to comprehension here. And so at this level here, these are going to be the questions. Teachers can type this in. If this was a level that students are writing on their own, there is a little box here where you can upload the evidence. So you could take a picture from your phone and then upload it in there, so you're not doing any of the typing. But once you've gone through all of this, again, it tells you to save and continue, and it's going to bring you to the continuum. Again, in the continuum, you're going to go ahead and pick and choose the descriptors. Obviously more carefully than what I'm doing there. I'm just showing you save and continue, and it's going to identify level. There's the additional reading engagement, takes you through. So hopefully what you're seeing is that all the materials are in here. It's going to take you through this. You can go through the summary and see how everything was scored and see whether you need to make any changes, and then go ahead and submit. Then you can go ahead and move into your focus for instruction. What is really nice about this feature here is that anything that was identified on the continuum as being an instructional or below level, it's going to go ahead and highlight recommendations for you, and then you can go ahead and then pick at least 3 areas in which we want to focus our instruction on. Also, if I go back to home here, can see I didn't save it, so whatever. But so if I go into a student now, if I go into this student here, this will take me into the different reports, and so I can see that there's a student action plan. So here, this is going to give me all of the details of the student's assessment, as well as the recommendations either from the program or from the focus for instruction that we filled out. So variety of different reports here. So student performance over time. If I had data in here, it would show some of these things. Student assessment history as well. And you can see that there's also a parent-guardian report that can be into a PDF. The rest of these can be downloaded in CSV or Excel files. So that is just a really quick overview of a little bit of the digital platform. I wanted to get that in and show you that. And hopefully now, hopefully we're back into the PowerPoint presentation there. Just to wrap up. So hopefully, so like I said, and then there's a support line in there too where you can get all your resources in those tutorials. But really, it's a time saver. It's really easy to use. It walks you through each one of those components. We're really excited about that feature, and so now you don't have to do all of it by hand. You're still doing the one-on-one conference with the students. The students still have the books. It's important for them to hold those books in their hands and for us to interact with them in one-on-one. But everything that the teacher does, they can do right on the computer to save them the time. So we're going to go ahead now. I wanted to, hopefully I'm back into the PowerPoint. I put they were doing some maintenance on my training site there. So I put some slides in here just in case. So I'm just getting to the end of those. But basically, hopefully it'll advance and it'll show. So we went over and showed a few of the reports that are in the system there. I wanted to just kind of show you an overview of the reports that we have within the system. A lot of them are new. If you're familiar with DRA, we've updated some other ones, and we've got more reports that are coming down the pike as well. So just wanted to show you that we do have a variety of different reports as well for that important information. And also for those schools and classrooms or teachers that may need a Spanish component. The DRA does come in equivalent Spanish. It's the EDL2+. So there is a program, it's a K-6 program that has similar components to the DRA. And so if you have a need for assessing Spanish students, you have that ability there too. What I'd like to do right now is just thank you for your time. Thank you for those of you who stuck on the line as we went a little bit over. But I really hope that the information I provided to you today was beneficial. I hope you're able to take some of those strategies and tips and implement them into your classroom, and I hope you enjoyed some of those. Hopefully some of them were new. But I also hope that you can see, beyond having some of those tools, how the importance of having a tool to really kind of diagnose and get deeper into your students, to really pinpoint their strengths and their needs, and to be able to really identify not only those strengths and needs, but how am I going to move them forward? How am I going to close those gaps, or how am I going to enrich and make them continue to move forward in their reading? And so hopefully DRA3 is another tool that you can include in your toolbox to really make the most out of the reading instruction and guiding your students becoming proficient and lifelong lovers of literacy and reading. Again, thank you very much. We didn't get to any questions today. Please, though, please enter whatever you need into the chat box, and I will go ahead and answer those and get back to you.